Hello! Today I have a bit of a different video and more of a soldering video. And this is because most of the time when we are doing this, besides the designing, we tend to have mess ups and we should really learn how to modify our boards and how do we alleviate this. So I've made loads of boards that I've always had to do modifications on them and whatnot, so I thought this would be a little fun one on how to do so. So to start off with, the problem was that if you remember from this project, this was a STM32 breakout board. I had this regulator from the micro USB. The micro USB isn't plugged on because I've had the wrong footprint. So we need to solder that on, and we need to make sure this LDO, it was tied to ground on the enable pin, should be tied to high to enable it. Simple mistake, and because I didn't read the datasheet properly, and I'll tell you on how we can alleviate this later on in the video. So we look at this pin and we're going to attach this wire that I have already stripped off to this pin and attach it to the enable pin. So let's do that now. I've already lifted off the pin and I won't show you, but it was quite a hassle to do so. I've broken components for that part also, but what you want to do first off is tin your wire. So I've got the finest tip on my soldering iron that I had on me, and I'm just gonna tin the wire best I can through rubbing soldered off solder, but ideally you should just flood it really, and you can put some on the other end as well. So afterwards you think it's been tinned to the best of your capabilities, we are going to put some new solder on the parts which we are soldering onto. So for here I have got this USB, so I'm going to solder that part on, just solder a bit of solder on to make it easier for me. And I'm going to solder to this pin over here. So I need to be really careful that I don't touch the pad on the bottom. As you can see, it's not that far a distance. So I could use thinner solder if I did have something, but unfortunately I don't. So I'm just using this. Just going to gently touch it. You know, there's a bit on there now, and that's all we need really. We're going to attach that wire with whatever tweezers you do have. They don't need to be like these ESD safe ones. But as you can see, I'm going to try and attach that dot there. I might snip the wire a bit more, just so I don't touch the other pin. I'm just going to carefully join the two. So you can see that's kind of been placed on. I'm going to take a closer look at it. Yep, that looks good to me. And I can see that there's a bit of a longer wire on that end, so we're going to snip it off a bit more. We don't want to snip too much, but ideally we should only use as much wire as we need. As you can see, I've got these wires here. So what I am going to do is steadily hold this wire over here while bringing this one to the side. And I'm doing this because I am worried that if I pull on it, I might pull the whole pin off. So I'm giving this a bit of extra support here. So I'm just going to twist it a bit more till I think that I am happy with the way the wire is going to come on, so I can easily solder it on. So there we go. So I'm happy with that. We can see. So I want to bring that in closer. I'm happy with the placement of the wire. So I'm going to grab my soldering iron again. And this time I'm going to... So what you want to be careful is that is that the heat may desolder this other wire when you are soldering, so you want to hold on to this wire, any piece of metal really, where you can touch on the wire. I know I'm touching the rubber here. And you just want to bring it closer to the capacitor, because this is where the live is. We're just going to touch it up, give it a bit of help. So we're going to leave that on our solder a bit more, and we're just going to bring it in, touch it. Yep, so we can see it. So just help it a bit more, resolder it up, make sure that we've got a good connection on. Let's take a quick look at that. I'll take a closer look. We can see it is soldered, but only partially. The bottom bit, the top bit isn't. So I'm going to hold on to that part, and I'm just going to just push it around a bit more. There we go. I'm going to take a closer look before showing it. We can see it's a bit, we can see it's covered now. It's connected to there. We've lifted up the pin and we've connected it through there. What I am going to do, since it is two separate solder blobs, I'm just going to touch it up a bit more. It may seem a bit excessive. So quick touch on the solder blob. We see that it is okay. We are happy. Now we can solder on the USB. You can see it's supposed to be a through-hole mount of some sort, but we only have the SMD pads here. So what I'm going to do is bend the pads along here so we can fit them on. We can see we have two mounting, but I'm not really too bothered about them. If I do have a heat gun on me now, but no paste, so I could not use paste. I could just use regular solder and melt it and get on with it, but I'm quite happy that we just soldered to mounting. So as you can see, I am going to bend the pins here just so we can fit it onto the mounting, place them on, and we're going to solder it up. So I'm going to do so for the other bit. These are the things that you might need to do when making up your board. If you make a mistake like this, you might need to play around with the part, configure it, just so you can place it on. So we're going to check that it works. If we place it on, we should see that it fits. Yeah, it fits quite nicely on. We'll need to solder it up. Of course, we want to give ourselves a bit of space for those pins so we can solder them up, but this should work nicely. So I have soldered one bit on here, this little bit. Let me move this solder work, because I'll probably end up touching and burning the plastic through. So this is just going to be my mounting pin. It's supposed to be a pretty bad solder joint. It's not, it's just really for placement. You can always touch it up later. So I'm just going to line it up really. So I can keep moving it about till I'm quite happy with placement. So after I filled around, got my placement sorted, I'm going to touch up this other connector here. Of course, this is not really ideal whatsoever, but you know, so be it. You can check the pins are still on the pads, which is good. So we can touch up this a bit more. Make sure that is a big blob of solder there. I'll solder this one up. Yep. And now the fun part of how do we solder these fine pins in the middle? The answer is flux, and lots of it. Luckily this one dispenses, you don't even need to press on it, you just need to touch it and bam, flux comes out. So after that we are just gonna carefully just placing the solder on the pads and just wiping them away. The nice thing is that it will bind to the pins. So you can see we have a little bridge here, so I'm just gonna steadily just wipe that away. Alright, so I soldered that up. I've had to change the tip to a more of a flat head, and I've just really just wiped it across like so with a lot of flux. Not really a lot, but a bit of flux. Just wiped it across, and you can see that we have a nice little solder joint between the pins. One thing you always want to do, is what I tend to do, is I just put a bit of flux on my soldering iron so it doesn't oxidize, I guess. And you could get tip cleaner in that, and that would probably solve the trick also, but when I'm done using it, I tend to do that. So now that we've done this, we are going to plug this in to my DIY power micro USB. You see it's one of these dumb ones that doesn't have any data lines or whatever, but it's perfect for this application really. So get my power supply is set at 5 volts. I'm going to turn down the current, probably 100 milliamps. Start off with, it's always a safe, well, 500 milli, what was that, 500 milliwatts? Still a lot, to be honest, so I'll turn it down. I'll put up to 10. We'll start ramping it up then. So make sure that's nice and separated, they don't touch or short out or whatever. Have our device here. Let's put it actually in the screen. And yeah, let's switch them. So it's current limiting. Turn it on. I'll put it to 20 milliamps. It's okay. Put it to 50 milliamps. Still nothing. It's 100 milliamps. I think we've got an issue here. Seems I had the wires the wrong way around. It seems the red on my USB is for ground and the white is for power, but a bit counterintuitive to me, but here we go. We have a green LED here. Fantastic. We know our device is powering on. Fantastic. We did a bit of checks at the voltage, 3v3. We know that's being powered, so we should be okay to say that the micro is being powered. This is great. Great news. It was a successful modification. Whoops. It's a successful modification. And now we can look into updating the design and ensuring that we can try and program this device. But first, let's take an issue into why this was the case and why was this issue happened. So within Altium, we have the project here on the power page. It was a very simple solution. Yeah, they still made the simple mistake of connecting it was the standby pin to ground. And maybe this could have been misleading, did mislead me at the time, but if we're not too sure, let's take a look at the datasheet. So I've already made the adjustment saying it's going back to VIN. Something you should do is always update it so you don't get mixed up and whatever. You should have some notes or a separate Word document stating what changes you've made also to keep yourself aware, because you're going to forget. Within the datasheet we have our device. We see that off and on. Look at that. So off, if it was low, the device wouldn't work, and if it was high, it would work. Shocking that we've somehow missed it, or I've missed it. It is even on the first page, but let's take a look at the graphs. Let's see if there was anything, maybe it could have illustrated. Standby pin voltage, output voltage 1.8, reference data. If we had something, we could have looked even further through here, see what else we could have done. There's so many things in the datasheet that would have illustrated that if we had something. So if we had here the threshold, we would see the output voltage of what the condition was. So it was right in front of us, and really there's really no excuse besides a simple mistake at the time. I made this board probably 7 months ago now. So it's simple mistake, just double check your work and things, but that was half of the modification we made, and luckily it wasn't too much. The reason was that the part number was also wrong on the micro USB. So if we go back to Altium, in our 3D model view, we see that it looks like the correct part, and now we can see the footprint that it was for what we wanted. But it looks like we don't have anything else regarding to it. It seems like I've ordered the wrong part. That's what I think at the time. That's what has happened. And what can you do? These things do happen. We just have to learn from them. That was the video for this. I hope you've learned something to do with the modifying a board process. You picked up a new skill on how to do so. I apologize for the audio and maybe the shakiness of the video. I did only have my phone on me. I hope this all made sense.